And if Angie's not available, I can answer that. I'm waiting to see if her mic goes live. There she is.
I'm sorry, I just walked in and I heard my name. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering with the ARPA fund, the 3 million that's requested, how are we going to ensure that the community partnership process is equitable and accessible, and it's an accurate representation of the communities who need tree canopy the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our tree planting in parks and the city is guided by a strategy that's called Growing a More Equitable Urban Forest, and it was created based in a community engagement process where the entire focus was equity. And so any funds that we spend on tree planting are through that strategy where that is the focus and that is our goal. And we could probably talk much more about that. Looks like Jen wants to add to that, but hopefully that is covered. I don't know if in public comment how much detail we can go into, but I would guide you towards looking at that. And I can point you to some more resources on our website as well.
Can you repeat what it was called? I didn't have a chance to write it down.
Yeah, sure. It's called Growing a More Equitable Urban Forest, the citywide tree planting strategy.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, great question.
And Sabina, the link is now in the chat to that document.
Right.
And Angie, for the sake of time, no, I'm not going to say anything else, right? Because we could do it on at length.
I don't see the link in the chat.
Oh, it was only to host and panelists, it looks like.
Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sabina, for that question. I think we can, if that's done, we can lower that hand. And I'd like to, if they're seeing no other hands, like to just get us moving on on the meeting approval.
Yes, this is
meeting notes and meeting notes from, and Brian sent that out recently. So,
and yeah, this is actually for the we are approving the minutes from the December and January meeting, which I just realized I sent out with the agenda packet last month, but we didn't get to it last month, and then I did not send them out again, so they're probably not at the top of people's inboxes right now. So I will.
Should we come back to this, Brian? Because I would love to introduce our new urban forestry commissioners, and
yes, I'd rather do that.
Okay, as you might have to dig up a couple of meeting minutes from previous sessions that we've had, just like to take this chance, at least a few minutes that we have, to welcome Roberta, Melinda, and Ivory. Very exciting to have you on board. Long awaited. We've been kind of eager to get folks, and I'm so glad you're willing to serve on the commission. Having been on the commission a few years now, I can tell you that it is a mix of trying to, I don't know, lack of a better phrase, drink from a fire hose, with lots of stuff coming at us all the time, with us trying to stay on top of things, trying to really respond effectively, coherently, and comprehensively to things. And it's a wild ride being part of this commission, in part because we are learning a lot about how the city operates, and trying to keep our ear to the ground as to what communities are asking about, and try to bring that back to the city so that we are kind of that advisory group. And so really excited to have you all on board. I know you bring a tremendous amount of background, interest, and kind of passion into this work. So I'd love for you to just introduce yourselves. If you could just spend a minute or two, just your background, what brought you to this place of wanting to serve on the commission, and anything else you'd care to share with us. So who wants to start?
I'll go.
Great.
Can folks hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Ivory, and I am an occupational health and safety professional with an academic background in environmental management and public health. I currently work at the Multnomah County Finance and Risk Management Department or Division, where I manage the industrial hygiene programs and I support employee safety efforts. What drew me to the UFC is that I believe in promoting community efforts because it's just so important to invest in our own backyards. And I guess I would just say I look forward to supporting and advocating for the UFC's mission.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ivory. Welcome aboard. Great. Melinda?
Sure. I am an architect and landscape architect, and I've studied both here and then on the East Coast. And I've come back to Portland because it's home. It's where I want to stay and live out the rest of my days. And I just want to invest in the community. This is where I raise my kids, and it's just an amazing amalgam of what I love, the urban. I love cities, but I also love the green, and it's so rare in other cities, and we've got both. And making sure that I think it's equitably distributed around all neighborhoods, and just understanding what amazing resources green infrastructure are for everyone. I think we really saw that with the pandemic, that people really are using and valuing public space and green space, and to kind of springboard off that and get people to continue to be excited about these resources that are hopefully right outside their door.
Wonderful. Thanks, Melinda. Welcome. Roberta.
Hello, I'm Roberta, and I am familiar with, I know a number of you. I don't know a number of you, but it's super exciting to meet you new folks. I live with my husband and 2 cats in Southeast Portland in the Johnson Creek watershed. And my background includes a 30-year plus career as an environmental professional working in natural resources and water resources policy and planning, largely in the public sector with local and state agencies. 25 of those years was with the city of Portland. So about 7 years with the Portland Water Bureau, about 3 years with environmental services, and about 15 years with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And so having worked on various climate, land use, natural resource plans, inventories, and the urban forest management plan and the tree code, I'm pretty familiar with the city structure, the agencies, the bureaus, the council, city council. I worked a lot with this commission as well, and really enjoyed working with the public. I too am drawn to the importance of natural resources and the urban forest as it relates to our community and public health. Since leaving the committee or the city employment, I wanted folks who don't know to know that I do work volunteer with the Urban Forestry Commission Policy Committee as well. And I'm excited about joining the Urban Forestry Commission at this time because I really want to help elevate the role of trees as critical infrastructure and asset management for the city's trees, particularly our street trees. I'd like to support city and community efforts for shade equity and reducing disparities in tree canopy across the city and the benefits that they provide. I'm really interested about continuing to learn. I mean, I love the learning part and learning more about trees, working as a team with you guys, collaborating with you guys. And with that, I have one request. I'm super excited, even though I'm familiar with the urban forestry program, when the staff goes and gives us an overview today, I'd love for you to also touch on the role of the Urban Forestry Commission, kind of where it is now, how you see it, what staff feels are its most important attributes and contribution to city programs, and so that we can best serve you.
Yay, welcome Roberta. Thanks for joining us, and really looking forward to working with all of you on this. I have the pleasure of serving as chair right now. I would love to see other folks stepping into this position over time. I've been chair now for many years, and I'm some new facilitation skills and new facilitation processes. I want to open that up. I became chair shortly after joining the commission, so no need to stay on for years and years before potentially rolling into this or other positions. We also have, we have vice chair, and we have, I think, officially by code, do we have, what is the term? Do we have a secretary? What is the term I think that's used now? Is that it? Just a vice chair and a chair? Okay. I haven't looked at the code official positions, but there's also the appeals board, which we'll talk about today. And there's also Heritage Tree Committee. And there is the policy committee that Daniel chairs. And at least the Heritage Tree Committee, Appeals Committee are by code required. And we have a policy committee. And if there's other committees, and this is again, just an open solicitation, if there are other committees that seem relevant for us to form and to really advance for doing our work well, so that we don't necessarily need to bring the whole conversation to our plenary group here, we can actually have a subcommittee to kind of iron out some of the nitty gritty of some of the issues that we face. And if there's a place, we used to have an education outreach committee, and so that left along with one of the commissioners who really kind of led that charge. Though if we are seeing other needs, please feel free to offer that. Really want to open that up. Ivory, Melinda, Roberta, if you're seeing things that we're doing that are missing aspects of what we could be doing, that's really what we have some prerogative over how we can really organize that. And just as long as we can kind of get staff or at least commissioner interest and participation in that. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we do want to go into minutes and then workshop planning. But Megan, looks like your hand is up.
I just wanted to know if it might be helpful for Roberta, Melinda, and Ivory to actually know who the fellow commissioners are, just like briefly, because they may not know which of us on this screen are and which aren't, and who we are. So even just a brief round of introductions I thought might be helpful.
Yes, thank you, Megan. You want to start? I've already said my piece. We'll just keep that going.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm Megan Vandemark. I use she, her pronouns. I've been on the commission for 4 years. In my day job, I work for Portland Audubon, co-managing the Backyard Habitat Program. So that's what I do.
Great. Bruce, you want to go next? I'll just go down my screen.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Nelson. I'm a retired horticulture instructor, longtime volunteer with Friends of Trees, and also my colleague neighborhood tree team and other activities, and also with Trees for Life Oregon. So, and this is my 3rd year,
Great.
Or maybe going on 4th.
Great, thanks, Bruce. And Jeanette, you want to go next?
Hi there, I'm Anjanette. I use they, them pronouns, and I work in environmental justice. And I really love our urban tree canopy, and that's why I come here.
Wonderful, thanks, Anjanette. Leah?
Hi, I'm Leah. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in education. So I've taught kindergarten and 1st grade, general kindergarten, and then physical education the last couple of years with Portland Public Schools. And now I work primarily in educating teachers and educators in science and STEM. So I definitely appreciate, coming here with that lens of, both how can I bring my work with the community into the commission, but also how can I take what I learned here and share that. And I do share that in workshops and, use the data that we talk about to help inform people and help get youth engaged in these problems in our community that they deserve to know about and to, address through math, science, engineering, all of that. So.
Wonderful. Thanks, Leah. I see Adrian coming around.
Hi, I'm Adrian Feldstein, and I'm fairly new to the board as well, a little less than a year, I believe. And I'm an occupational environmental health physician and just a longtime recreation and tree enthusiast. I'm also on the Portland Parks and Rec Board. And depending upon the vote today, I think I'll be chairing the appeals committee.
All right, thanks, Adrian. Daniel.
Hi, Daniel Newberry, he, him. And let's see, I've been on the commission, 5+ years and an additional year before that on the policy committee. And I chair the policy committee currently. And so we're always looking for people on the commission interested in getting involved in policy because there never seems to be a lack of things to do there. We do a lot of testifying before the city council, the Planning and Sustainability Commission. We write letters to commissioners, directors of different departments. So it's a really good way if you have an interest in the policy side to join our committee. In my day job, I'm the director of the Johnson Creek Watershed Council, and we also do a lot of tree planting, probably 25,000 a year, although we don't plant big trees, we just plant bare roots and plugs, mostly along Johnson Creek. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Daniel. I think that's everybody. Do we have all 10 commissioners here right now? Is that what I'm seeing? Like, is this like a first time in very long to have this kind of a quorum? So exciting. Is that right, Brian? Is this the crew?
That's it. Yeah, that's everyone.
Right on. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Very excited about this moment in our evolution here. So I want to just turn to minutes and get us looking. Brian, thanks for sending those. You sent December, January minutes. Really appreciate that. Folks could take a look if you haven't already. If there are any amendments, now would be the time. Edits, now would be the time to bring those up before I call a formal vote on these minutes. Is there anything you see that's off or missing or needs further clarification or you'd like removed? Okay, and if you have, and once we're at a place where folks have read this, I'll need a motion to move on each of the month's minutes separately.
Vivek, I guess, I'd be abstaining because I haven't read them. So I imagine the new members would, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. Daniel.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion in the past few months, including at least in January here, about this issue of terms and term limits and all that. And I'm wondering, because this is likely to come up again at some point, I'm wondering if that shouldn't be captured in the minutes.
Was that in February, Daniel?
We've been discussing it like every month for like 3-4 months.
Brian, yeah.
I mean, maybe we just capture that in the February minutes, but it would be helpful, I think, for everybody to know, what came down when we talked to the city attorney, or Jen talked to the city attorney, I guess, but just to have a record of that.
Yeah, good. Brian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's great. I think it was in the February meeting when we were able to provide some clear direction that we got from the city attorney. And so I can definitely make sure that those are in the February minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, because among other things, we're at 10 and not 11 now. And we had a question about people terming out, and I don't know, it could have been possible at some point to have one of them stay on until we got an 11th member, but apparently that didn't happen. So just having that record would be great.
Yeah, great. Maybe February minutes, Brian? Is that where it could be after we got the info? Great. Thanks. A motion to move December minutes?
I will move to have the December minutes accepted as is, because no one's made any friendly amendments.
Okay, a second?
I second.
Okay, Leah seconds. All in favor, virtual or physical hand, if we can see you. Okay, all opposed? Any Okay, I presume any abstentions? I think we're gonna have, okay. Great, thank you for those December, and same for January. Is there anything, we could have done this in a bundle, but I was presuming there might be something separate in each, but anybody, can we have the same call for January minutes?
I move to approve January minutes.
Okay, great.
Second.
Leah seconds, and all in favor, hand, virtual hand, or physical hand? Great, looks unanimous. And then anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, 3 abstentions. Okay, thank you, folks, so moved. Thanks for that. We've got those in the record, in the public record now. And I wanted to move quickly into workshop planning. Brian, did you want to bring that up?
Sure, yeah. This is mostly sort of a attendance potential check. So obviously you've seen a few emails about trying to find a date outside of our regularly scheduled monthly meetings. It's been difficult to find a date so far where everyone can attend, or even having more than 5 or 6 commissioners attend. So we wanted to propose, Vivek and I chatted about this earlier this week, about holding it in June. And so instead of the June meeting, we would hold a retreat, which would be kind of the same time frame, about usually about 4 hours, what we've done in the past. So from around 8 to noon. But that would be on June 16th. And so we wanted to float that as an option, and really just get a sense if everyone would be able to be there. I know that I think both Roberta and Megan have noted that they most likely would not be able to attend those dates. So we are down 2 at that point, but I just want to get a sense from everyone if the June 16th date would work.
Any comments? Yeah, any reactions, comments? Megan, you're not able to join. Roberta's not able to join. Is it worth trying to get? I mean, personally, I feel like I want to try to get everybody there, because each person, we're a small group, and it's like each person's perspective is just so precious, and I would love to get everybody there. Is it worth, Brian? I'm just going to put it out there. Is it? I know I don't want to kick this can down the road too much further, but is it worth? Is it worth revisiting to get everyone there?
I was gonna say I can send. How about this? And I appreciate everyone's patience with filling out doodle polls over and over. But I could take one more shot, give us another 5 or 6 date options, see if there's a date that works for everyone, and then if that doesn't work, we can just fall back to the June 16th date.
Okay, Daniel. Let's hold the June 16th, in other words, for now, and then we'll try one more. Thanks, Brian, for your patience. Your patience with us on this. It's just really trying to get everyone there. Daniel.
I'm just wondering if it's worth taking a quick hand poll right now, about days of week or times of day, just to help Brian come up with some dates to see if there's certain days that don't work for people. Or
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, basically they've always been weekdays, and they've been in the mornings from 8 to 12. So we've been kind of aiming for, but if people feel like, I assume evenings are more challenging, so we've avoided that, but happy to, accommodate that as well.
Brian, is this an in-person meeting?
We were hoping for it to be in person, and obviously that depends on everyone's comfort level, the state of COVID as well, but we were planning for it to be in person, and then we could always pivot to hold it on Zoom if for some reason that isn't able to happen.
Okay, well, the last meeting that I was before summer, summer I'm usually gone. So after the June 16 meeting, I'm traveling. Okay. And so if we do it sooner, then I probably couldn't come. If we do it later, I probably was going to miss the next couple meetings, the next 2 meetings at least.
Okay, yeah. big.
Hey, Brian, I'm just wondering if this is not a public meeting, we wouldn't necessarily have to have people come downtown to City Hall, right? There might be a more convenient place.
Yeah, I think we were actually talking about Leech Botanical Garden as an option. Yeah.
Southeast Portland, outer Southeast Portland.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. We'll have one more
Thanks,
poll
everyone.
coming out, and we'll try to. Yeah, for me, summer's a lot more open too. So like if we can get something that was first 2 weeks of June, even so we can get Anjanette and if those could work, we'll try for that. Let's try for first 2 weeks of June if we can. Awesome. Thanks for your thanks everyone. Unless there's anything else coming up for workshop planning, I'd like to move to a very exciting moment of the appeals board. And we weren't able to vote for our appeals board members last time. We have quorum, and we're excited that Adrian to chair the appeals board and Leah to join the appeals board. Is one other person? We have other people on the appeals board right now who are commissioners. Is that Bruce is one of them, and Anjanette, I think, is the other. So we have Anjanette and Bruce on the appeals board, and this is a vote for getting Adrian as chair and Leah as a member of the appeals board. I don't know if you want a stump speech right now for this or anything like that. I don't think you have other competitors in this race, so. But
speeches, you're welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's exactly it.
I would like to request having maybe Leah as co-chair if she's willing, just to have backup when I'm out of town. I don't know if that's acceptable to everyone.
I don't think there's anything in code preventing that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Brian, for confirming. Cool. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. So we have and Leah, that's up to you as well. Like if you're open to co-chairing appeals board.
I haven't even attended any of the meetings yet, so maybe.
Okay. Yeah. And you have a couple of seasoned folks on the appeals board too that can help with that kind of the what do we call it? The kind of onboarding and kind of situating with some of the issues that have come up in the past, some of the kind of questions that emerge during the appeal. And so it's a very serious role to play for the commission, because it does have implications for individuals, the way they interact with our urban forests. So very grateful for your willingness to serve on that. So I'd love to get someone to call a vote for getting 2 new appeals board members, Adrian and Leah. Bruce, I see your hand up.
I move that we approve Adrian Feldstein as the chair of the appeals board, and tentatively approve Leah Plack as backup, subject to her checking on things.
Though serving on the board.
Yeah, well, serving on the board, yes, and as a backup to the chair. Sorry about that. Is that clear as mud?
Is that okay? We'll see with the vote, and if there are any clarification. So second, anybody?
I'll second.
Megan, thank you. All right, let me call a vote. All in favor of Adrian, Leah joining the appeals board. Adrian is chair, Leah is tentative co-chair, virtual or physical hand. All right, looks like it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll be following up on that, and usually it goes in 11:30, right after 11:30 to 12, right after this meeting. So it's just a little bit follow up of our once a Thursday meetings for the appeals discussion. Wonderful. Jen, can I turn it over to you for your Urban Foresters report?
That you may, Vivek. Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Nodding. Great. Thank you so much. Good morning, all. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to our new members. Ivory, Melinda, Roberta, thank you so much for joining the club. I'm Jen Kyra. I'm the city forester, and my role is directing and leading the city's tree and urban forestry program. I use she, her pronouns. And before I do my report, I want to turn some time back to Brian so he can do an important introduction for you all. Brian.
Yeah, I'm excited to introduce you to a new urban forestry staffer. Well, new to this position. She's been with urban forestry for, I'll say 6 or 7 months in a few roles. Ashley Reese is with us today. She is urban forestry's first division-wide administrative specialist. So we're thrilled to have her on board, and she's going to be attending UFC meetings, supporting this group, taking meeting minutes. So perhaps in April we approve the March minutes and not the December and January minutes, getting us caught up on that a little bit. So yeah, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind just saying hey to the group and introducing yourself real quick.
Hi all. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I'm really excited to be here. It's one of the reasons why I took the position, was just taking the minutes for this meeting. So among a million other reasons, but my background is I spent 10 years managing and working in retail tree and shrub nurseries, but that just doesn't cut it when you want to work in the urban forest. And a couple years back, I read Growing a More Equitable Forest Report, and knew that I would do everything in my power to work for urban forestry. So I went back to school through the arboriculture program at CCC, preparation to take the ISA arborist exam, and have just been really persistent and eager in every role. So I worked a little bit on Angie DeSalvo's tree planting team as a seasonal last year, as well as for the permitting and regulation team as a support for the tree tech team. And now I'm really excited to be in this all new role and really make the most of it and really support urban forestry and its goals. So thanks for having me, and you'll probably see me taking notes now and then, but I'm always here and paying attention. So thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Ashley, so much for being here and doing that role. And it's great to have you continuing with us. I'll go back to the more substantive parts of my report for today. And before we move off of membership, I wanted to note for everyone that, of course, Ivory, Melinda, and Roberta were appointed by council. That was a unanimous vote of city council that occurred just in the past few weeks. And Megan was also reappointed, so she's beginning on her second 4-year term. Thank you, Megan, for continuing on with the commission and for your service. And I want to thank also Ann Jeanette, who is not renewing. She's completed a 4-year term and elected not to go for a second one, but graciously committed to stay on the commission until we get another person for her seat. So thank you, Ann Jeanette, very much for your service and for keeping at it for a bit longer. I also want to say that we have a new recruitment for the vacant seats that'll be starting shortly. And we've been working with Parks and Rec's larger community engagement team on that recruitment to find some new and improved methods with the goals of our applicant pool being large and representing and reflecting the diversity of Portland, because those are the folks we serve and those are the folks that we have not been able to hear a lot from in the form of the commission in the past. Once we have the postings ready, that information ready, we'll certainly share it with all of you and ask you to spread it around through your networks and encourage applicants. And today's agenda, as you saw, includes a brief overview of the forestry program and the commission's role. And that's for the new commissioners' edification, but it's also a refresher for everyone. We haven't done this in quite a while. Like, I don't think I can remember the last time we did this type of information. And it's also intended to be helpful as the retreat approaches to help inform that. Second item, yeah, it snowed a whole lot, unexpectedly, abnormally for April, last Monday, the 11th. And that resulted in over 800 calls to our tree emergency response system, which is extremely high. I see Ashley nodding. Ashley's been pitching in to try to help our tree techs navigate all of the requests that we've gotten. There's been major damage to many trees from the weight of that unseasonal and wet snow. And many thanks to our arborists, our tree tech team, and the supervisors and managers in those groups for working really long hours to get roads open quickly and also responding to calls for assistance and following up. Roads are open and were open late last week. So that was successful and relatively quick given the volume of calls. And that means most of the reported urgent public safety hazards were addressed last week. Now the rest of the project is addressing the remainder and cleaning up from that. And that will take many weeks to do. So that means, for your information, in case you hear about this or asked about it by Portlanders, we are having delays in responding to emails and calls and in processing permit applications. And usually our response time on that first step, the tree single point of contact, trees@portlandoregon.gov or 823-TREE, is within 3 business days. Right now we're at 14 days for responding to requests received and to start processing permit applications. So we're working as fast as possible to get back on track. And have made some adjustments to expedite things and have requested and are getting some new help to do that with us, meeting the surge. Yeah, and that's the information I have for you on that. Let's see, another item. You all commissioners received some detailed information earlier this week by email about a heritage tree owned by Portland Public Schools that was mistakenly applied for removal, permitted for removal, and then removed outside the regular heritage tree removal application process. In addition to you having received that information, the heritage tree committee members have also received that information. The upshot is the tree wasn't indicated by Portland Public Schools, who submitted the removal application. It's their tree, it's on their property, or on site, no plaque, as a heritage tree. And the application review process did not catch that error. So we all very much regret that mistake and wish it hadn't happened. We've changed the application review process. We did that right away. And also Urban Forestry and Parks are working on other improvements to preclude this ever happening in the future. We've also requested changes in Bureau of Development Services permitting system in which we operate. So hopefully they'll be able to make those quickly. And if you have any further questions or information needs on this particular topic after reviewing the emailed information, which is much more detailed, please contact me directly on that. I have 3 more items. Bureau of Transportation recently held their public hearing on proposed updates to the pedestrian design guidelines. And as you have heard from me in the past, and you all have discussed and weighed in on with PBOT in the past, the pedestrian design guide affects street tree space, so it's important for this group in terms of city policy advice. Thank you, Bruce, for crafting comments on the current draft of the pedestrian design guide on behalf of the commission and submitting those. And I wanted to let you know that Urban Forestry, of course, as I've reported before, we've been working with PBOT on that update throughout the project. We also submitted additional comments during the public hearing process and requests, all geared towards obtaining more space for street trees in that updated document. And Bureau of Transportation is reviewing those, the commissions and other public comments received through the hearing, and we expect further discussion with them on that once they've gotten through them. Next item, I just wanted to lay out for you, we have a few upcoming items at City Council, all of which come to you folks first for advice and part of our reporting.
For Carolyn and Bruce.
Oh, sorry. Part of our reporting at City Council includes what the commission's advice has been and has the commission advised the city on this and Urban Forestry on that. So those are the permit fee schedule update. That's on today's agenda for you all to hear about and weigh in on. And then on the 18th, we will be at City Council with the heritage tree listings and also the Title 11 Trust Funds report. Heritage tree was covered at an earlier commission meeting, so you already did that part. And the trust funds report is also on today's agenda. And for our new commissioners, all of these 3 things are brought to council annually. This is usually around this time of year in the spring. And we seek the commission's advice on each one of those as they are policies affecting trees in the forest. And my last item is, I believe Brian sent you all via email a public hearing announcement from the Water Bureau on their new proposed administrative rule. And that rule includes prohibiting planting of trees within 10 feet of a large water supply pipe called a transmission pipe under a complete street, which means a paved road with curbs and sidewalks, as opposed to others that don't have a sidewalk, for example, or a curb. So the proposed rule as written will eliminate thousands of street tree planting spaces now, and when trees currently in those spaces die or otherwise removed and would be prohibited from being planted again. So Urban Forestry continues to express concern to Water Bureau and is working with them, as we have for some time, to try to resolve the issue to avoid the loss of street tree space and street trees. The comments in the public hearing are due by May 20th. So I would like to request that the commission review the materials in the public hearing, review the proposed administrative rule, prepare comments on it, and submit those before the public hearing closes, which is on May 20th. So your next meeting is on May 19th. So there could be a vote on May 19th on comments to submit by the end of the following day. But I do think it's germane. I want to advise you that it's very germane to our tree canopy, and it would warrant your attention and request that you take a look at those things and make comments. That's the end of my report. Thanks for your attention. I'll take any questions you have.
And Jen, I'll just note quickly that this is a little unusual, but actually the public hearing for the Water Bureau admin rule is actually before the comment deadline. It's on May 18th, the day before the UFC meeting. So I'm just realizing now that that's actually before. Usually the public hearing comes after the comment hearing. So if the commission wanted to have someone provide a comment, we would want to vote on that today as well.
Thank you. Yeah, so to clarify, right, Brian, there doesn't have to be a vote today, obviously, on what will be said, but the commission, if you would like to do this work, should vote on who's going to work on comments, who's going to make comments at the hearing, because it's before your next meeting. There is time to look at the comments and vote on a final version to submit from the commission at the next meeting.
Okay, I see, just before we go, Daniel, Bruce, I see Anjanette's question around, was the heritage tree dead or dying?
Thanks, Anjanette. Yes, and this is in that email you got, and it only went out a couple days ago, so you probably haven't gotten to it yet. But yes, the tree was in decline. Otherwise, our inspector probably would have been, this looks like quite a tree. Maybe I should take extra steps. But yeah, that's why it was permitted for removal. It was considered a dying tree. So it met regular standards, but there's a different process for heritage trees that wasn't able to be followed.
Okay, Daniel and then Bruce.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of introduce to our new members a procedure that we often use, which is that it's quite frequent that UFC hears about an issue a lot of times because other bureaus will announce it a month before the meeting or even 2 months before the meeting. But because we only meet every month, we're kind of on a tight timeline if we want to get comments together to submit. So one of the things we often do is we'll say, how about if the policy committee that has several commissioners on it puts together something and then sends it out. And we can either do things like send our draft to the commission. Well, actually, we can't do that because of public meeting problems. But what we do is we basically give the committee the authority to submit comments on behalf of the commission. So that's one thing that we do quite frequently. And since we have our policy committee meetings the Monday evening after this meeting, so next Monday from 5:45 to 7:15. It's a Zoom meeting. That way, anybody who's not normally on the committee but has an interest in a specific issue could join and participate. And what we do at the policy committee meetings when we're putting together comments is we have a long discussion where we get kind of the list of concerns and issues that people want to get put into the letter. One or more of us will put a draft together, send it out to committee members, get additional comments, revise it, and then we'll submit. So that's something that we often do. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Thanks, Daniel, for that clarification of policy process and our process. Bruce, and then
a comment and a question. I suspect there would have been a lot less storm damage to street trees if those trees had had regular maintenance, but it's just another situation that's arisen because Portlanders to date have not decided to go in that direction. The question I have is on the storm damaged tree, since there's a backlog of branches on piled up where other people could put them. I know in the past there was an occasion where there was an incredible amount of storm damage, and I think either Parks and Recreation or Urban Forestry itself or both set up drop-off stations where people could drop their branches as a way to clear the debris from the streets. And I wondered if that's been a possibility or if the thought is, well, there's really not enough to merit that situation. Because I know it is an issue for many homeowners, how to get rid of the branches.
Thanks. Vivek, should I respond?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the comments, Bruce. And yes, things that aren't maintained tend to fail more than things that are maintained. Regarding drop-off sites, we are not planning to do any debris drop-off sites, and we haven't done that in my tenure here. That's logistically and spatially really challenging for us at a time when we're trying to get things done as quickly as possible. So we are trying to get all the debris that has been created by us and our colleagues in PBOT off of the road as fast as possible instead. We are also encouraging folks, if they can, to use their green bins. There are also private companies through our local tree care provider list that folks might want to engage with to help with cleanup.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Bruce. Roberta?
Yeah, I agree that it would be really great to get the Urban Forestry Commission Policy Committee testifying at the hearing, or in person if possible, and to put together a letter. For the staff, for Jen and Brian, you mentioned, Jen, that there's thousands of sites are going to be precluded by the new Water Bureau rule. Any analysis that you have done on this? Numbers, maps. I know you've been providing comments and negotiating with the Water Bureau for quite some time on this. I think it would be super helpful if you could forward in the next couple of days, whatever's available, if there's anything information-wise or data-wise that can help support those arguments in terms of the analysis you've done about lost sites, the distribution of those sites geographically, and so forth. That would be super helpful to the policy committee in putting together its comments.
Thank you, Roberta. We'll do what we can. We ourselves haven't had a whole lot of analytical capacity on this. We've used some case studies to illustrate things. I would encourage the commission to consider asking the Water Bureau for that kind of information too. Like, what are the tree impacts that they're seeing? But yeah, we'll follow up with what we can.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Roberta. Thanks, Jen. Excellent. Thank you, Jen, for that urban forestry report. Like to keep us moving along with our agenda, and really there's a couple of items that need immediate attention. From what I understand is the tree fee schedule, as well as Title I Trust Fund report, which goes to council. So let's start, Brian, with a tree fee schedule update.
Yes. All right. So I am presenting the annual update to the urban forestry trees fee schedule. So this is the council, the document that goes to council every year that gives us authority to charge fees, and those fees really are essential in order to funding of urban forestry's ability to perform its regulatory obligations under Title 11. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the fee schedule. Our fees are broken into two different types. We have the sort of overall categories are development fees and non-development fees. Development fees are intended to be at full cost recovery. So the fees are really supposed to cover the cost of forestry providing that service to people conducting development activity. And then we have our non-development fees. And non-development fees are things like tree removal permits, street tree pruning permits, things like that, which we charge much lower fees, and they are well below cost recovery, because the intention there is we want to encourage compliance. And then for certain permits, like a street tree planting permit, we don't charge any fee at all, because again, we want to encourage that activity. So for FY23, which begins July 1st, 2022, Urban Forestry is proposing a 7.5% increase to almost all of our development fees. And this is in keeping with Urban Forestry has a hourly rate for tree inspection services, and that fee is set by the Bureau's financial team. And then the Office of Management and Finance also develops a overhead rate for the Parks Bureau. So this hourly rate is intended to be an all-inclusive cost, and that's increasing from $134 an hour to $144 an hour. And again, that rate includes everything. It includes staff time, facilities, technology, fleet costs. It's really intended to capture the full cost of providing that service. And so our development fees are increasing in line with that 7.5% increase. So that's on the strikeout column. You'll see the current fees. The new fees are in red. I want to highlight a few fees that are not increased 7.5% or are new fees. And this is actually a positive development. So commercial demolition review and residential demolition review. In the past, BDS has not sent many of these reviews to Urban Forestry to assess potential street tree impacts. They've only involved us sort of at a discretionary level when they think there are more significant impacts. And so that fee has always been set a little bit high, in that it's assuming we're only involved in cases which will require multiple site inspections, a lot of staff time. Beginning in July, BDS is going to be sending all demolition reviews to Urban Forestry, which is a great development. But that does mean that a large majority of those won't require a site visit, and so won't require as much time. So that's why we're actually reducing the cost of that fee, because across all the reviews, the average time is going to drop to about half what it is right now. And then the other fee I want to just draw your attention to is the grade and gravel review fee, and that is the only new fee that we are including. This is kind of an interesting one. It's a result of the residential infill project. That project reduced. I don't know exactly how to. It looks like it will reduce the frequency of new driveways being developed, and instead existing alleyways will be used to access a lot of these new developments. And so PBOT is expecting more alleys to be partially improved, so not paved, but new gravel applied, things like that. And obviously, there are trees and alleys, and that is a public right of way. So those are city or street trees. And so Urban Forestry review to ensure preservation of those trees is required. So This is not something that we see a lot of right now, but with residential infill project, we do think we're going to see more. So that's what that new fee is being assessed for. And then other than that, there are no other increases. All of our development, all of our non-development enforcement fees, things like that are all staying the same. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing since I see a few comments in the chat that I need to respond to.
Okay.
I see.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I was just gonna say, I see a question from Daniel. Can you remind us of fee waivers for low income individuals? These fees have been rising every year. Yeah, so the non-development fees have not been rising, and that's what the fee waivers apply to. They are really for the non-development fees, and so that program is continuing. We do not offer fee waivers for development fees, though.
Brian, do you have any sense for the if a commercial entity were to do the same thing, do you have a sense for relationship between what these hourly rates are versus a commercial entity? Are they higher, lower? Are there orders of magnitude difference?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's a comparable commercial entity that does the kind of work that we do. I will say that our hourly rate is quite a bit lower than other bureaus, but I can't think of another private entity that does the kind of review that Urban Forestry does.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Do you ever, just a side note, do you ever get pushback on this at all? Like this floats through. I've been on this commission long enough to we don't really push back on this at all. It's just we ask questions about, I think I've noticed around the equitable impacts of this, which is really in line with a lot of our interests in this work. So do you get pushback from other bureaus?
Not from other bureaus. I was actually at the Development Review Committee, Development Review Advisory Committee, which is BDS is the Bureau of Development Services Advisory Group, which does, there are a lot of developers and architects and land use attorneys on that group. They didn't have any objections to this one. That's not to say they don't object to city fees. That's not to say they don't object to city fees at large, but at least I think ours are really relatively small compared to other fees that are involved in development review. So, but yeah, we didn't receive any comments or pushback on this.
Okay. So we need a vote on this, right?
No, there's actually no, this is more informational, but also receiving feedback and advice before it goes to city council next month.
That's right. This is an internal thing that, right. Bruce?
Let's see. So my question is, if I build a new house and I'm the developer, how many of these different fees am I likely going to have to pay? I mean, for an individual residence, is it commercial construction, a residential construction? So I've got a 584. If it's near an alley, then I need to add on the grade and gravel. Do I need a public works review on top of that? How many of these are actually going to apply? Because it looks like potentially you're talking about thousands of dollars to urban forestry for building a house.
It really depends on the development activity that's being proposed and what steps they go through. In a pretty typical single family development, or now with residential, there's a duplex or a triplex. The residential construction fee is probably the only one you're going to be assessed, because you're likely not going to be going through any sort of early assistance or land use review. If you're not using the alleyway to access, you're not going to have the grade and gravel review. And if you're not demolishing a building, you're not going to have that fee either. So typically, it's really only the very large projects, like a large apartment building that might require multiple of these because of the various phases of development review happening. And Rick Faber is here, which he knows far more about development review process and how these fees are actually applied in practice. So if he's here and is able to clarify any of that. But yeah,
I think you covered it exactly perfectly, Brian. That's exactly the situation. Most small projects, they're going to have just the one review, but then large projects, very large projects could start with a land use or an early assistance, then get a land use, and then have to do public works. And it's important to recognize that this isn't just urban forestry. Those are just city fees across the board. We're never doing this alone. So it's the city review process for various permit types and processes.
So then on how do we ensure that new residential construction, there actually are street trees that are planted if there's no final inspection? Or is that not something that is able to be done at this point?
That's a great, painful question. That is something that we are working on. We have done studies to see what kind of compliance rates we have, but that is one of the big next steps that we hope to tackle is ensuring that every single tree that's required actually gets planted and established.
And if I could jump in and add to Rick, pretend I'm Rick's voice. Bruce, that is one of the specific commitments that Parks and Recreation has made in using the Parks Operations Levy, is improving on implementation and compliance with tree code.
And I'll add to that. Part of this decrease is both to keep up with just year-over-year increases in cost, but also to respond to the rising development activity. It obviously took a dip during COVID, but we are seeing it increase now. And included in urban forestry's requested budget is our 2 new tree inspectors that are going to be funded by these fees, and that'll help chip away at that issue.
Okay, I will ask commissioners to be brief with your questions because we're right up against our time. We're over time on this particular issue. So think about between this and the trust fund report, which we're going to have to talk about too. But there's plenty of space in the chat as well to put your questions. But if it's better done with your voice, then do so. Megan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. I just realized I want to make certain I'm understanding this correctly. So for the preservation fee in lieu, if I am a developer developing a lot, I have 3 trees that are in between 12 and 20, inch diameter. I want to develop. I don't feel like I can preserve those trees. I feel like I should know this, but do I just, I pay 1,800 times 3 and I cut those trees down?
I'll step in on this one. So you have 3 trees. They're all less than 20. The preservation requirement is 1/3 of those trees. So if you cut all 3 of them down, you're paying preservation for 1 of them. So you can cut 2 of them down without paying any fees.
Oof. Okay. Thanks. Glad I asked.
My reaction too, Megan. It's like, wow, that's a freebies, and also offers. Yeah. Anyway, we can come back to that. Let's keep conversation going. I saw a couple of hands up. I see them down now, but want to move. And Brian, are you discussing the trust fund report as well?
Yes, I'm just rolling right into the next one. So this next item is Urban Forestry's annual Title 11 fund report to City Council. So this is something that I think for the new commissioners, when we schedule your kind of more in-depth training, you'll learn a lot more about this. But Title 11 established two funds for urban forestry to use. One is called the Tree Planting and Preservation Fund, and one is called the Urban Forestry Fund. The Tree Planting and Preservation Fund is the primary pot of money, really the only dedicated funding source for tree planting for urban forestry. The majority of that revenue comes from exactly the situation that Megan was just describing. It is trees which are required by Title 11 to be preserved in a development situation, but can be removed if a fee is paid. And so that's where most of the revenue to this fund comes from. And urban forestry uses that to plant and establish trees. The second fund is called the Urban Forestry Fund. It's a smaller fund. It comes mostly from violations of Title 11. So a tree is removed without a permit. A penalty is assessed for that. And the Urban Forestry Fund is a little more broad. It can be used for tree planting, it can be used for tree maintenance, but it can fund a lot of other types of activities like education, outreach, technical analysis, things like that. And so Title 11 requires that we report to City Council every year on the revenue that went into those funds, the expenses, how the fund was used, and then also what our future plan is. So I'll share my screen real quickly to go through just a few highlights of this report. Zoom in a little bit. See it. So this is for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2021. Going into that fiscal year, the balance of that fund of the tree planting and preservation fund was about 4.1 million. They received about 1.3 million in revenue that year. We spent almost $500,000 out of that fund. And then on the urban forestry fund side, it had a balance of about $995,000. They've received 48,000 in revenue, and there were no expenses that year out of that fund. And one of the things that we're noting here, and this is actually something that the UFC has asked in prior years for us to add, which I think is really helpful, is to add, whenever we use the tree planting fund to plant trees, we establish them for 3 years. This is done through the 3 different contracts we have in place for contractors. And so whenever we plant a tree, we are incurring a future cost, and that is the cost of waters in the future. So as of June 30, 2021, we had incurred $166,000 in future tree watering costs. That amount will go up quite a bit since in this current fiscal year, we are planting many more street trees using those contractors than we did in this prior fiscal year. So when the report goes out next year for this year, you'll see that increase quite a bit. And then I'm going to scroll down to, this is just part of the code that details the use of the fund. I just want to show you the tree planting component. So the fund was used to plant about 1,700 trees. 242 of those were through the street tree planting program. As I said, we're planting about 750 street trees this year. So this was really that was the first year of that street tree planting program. Other trees planted through Learning Landscapes, which is where we partner with Portland Public Schools and other schools. 100 trees in developed parks, about 150 in natural areas, and then our yard tree giveaway program gave away about 1,200 trees. And I do want to note that natural areas, that is not all the trees that Portland Parks plant in natural areas. Those are just the ones that were funded by the Tree Planting and Preservation Fund. So this is not meant to be a holistic tree planting report. That's a separate report that we've brought to the UFC in the past. This is just the trees that are paid for out of this fund. I think that's the only thing I want to highlight. Oh, the other thing I know is that there were no expenses for the Urban Forestry Fund. Part of the reason for that is we will be using that fund to update our street tree inventory. That's a project starting right now. And our estimates between all the costs associated with that update over about a 3-year period, hiring seasonal staff, the vehicles, equipment, staff time, that the estimate is that project is going to cost $500,000 or $600,000 over 3 years, which will be paid for out of the Urban Forestry Fund. So a large percentage of the Urban Forestry Fund is committed to that project. So while there were no expenses in the prior fiscal year for that fund, we do expect to spend quite a bit over the next few years.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
All right, questions, comments, responses, reactions, tree fund. Roberta. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, two quick questions, Brian. If you said this, forgive me, but the fund that allows use of money for conservation easements and purchase, has that ever been done before? And my second question is it looks like the urban forestry is authorized to use funds for maintenance for 5 years, maintenance and establishment for 5 years, and we're doing it for 3. And I was just curious about that.
Yeah, good question. So on the first one, that's right. For other members of the commission not familiar, the code does allow us to use a tree planting fund to purchase conservation easements or actually purchase property for the purpose of preserving the trees on site. It has not been used for that. A conservation easement program has not been developed, and that's a pretty long-term commitment. And honestly, given the value of land in Portland, and the amount of funding available in that fund, I don't see it being used for that at any time in the near future. Not to preclude that happening at some point, but I think in terms of the sort of return on the investment, I think that's not something that we planned on. The other question is on, so originally Title 11 only allowed us to plant or to water trees for 2 years. We could only use the fund for watering for two years. About 2 or 3 years ago, with the changing climate, the hotter, drier summers we're experiencing, we recognize that's going to be an issue. So right now, our contracts are set up to water for 3 years, but we did change code to allow us to water them up to 5. So that'll really be a case by case basis if we were to water them longer than that. But 3 years is the standard right now.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Roberta. Other questions, commissioners, about tree fund funds? Looks like Daniel and then Bruce.
So Brian and Jen, I know this is a question you've heard in the past, probably every year, in the last few years when we talk about the tree preservation fund, but that is, with the need, because of climate change and other things, we really need to get trees in the ground as soon as possible. And the funds keep going up and up and up and up every year. I understand that this is a very nuanced situation because there are a lot of things that prevent us from getting as many trees in the ground as we'd like to. But I'm wondering if you've ever thought about having a goal to have that fund amount go down instead of keep allowing it to go up every year because we have such a great need now. But I do recognize that there are barriers for being able, like finding spots to put the street trees is just one of many issues. But I'm just wondering, what your goals are in terms of using this fund. And if you have ever thought about making it a goal to have that amount go down instead of go up every year.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Tree planting, planning for tree planting does take some time. But we are at a point actually where I think beginning next fiscal year is actually when you are going to see that balance start going down. So right now, our projections, and this is actually in the report, it was not in the original version that I posted, but we made the change and I reposted this morning, so you wouldn't have seen this, but we are expecting to spend at least 1.3 million per year going forward starting next year. And actually our projections have the fund balance after 5 years reducing to about 2.5 million. And that's including the expenses versus revenue over the next 5 years, plus the outstanding balance commitments for watering trees that have already been planted. So we are expecting that curve to start to change as our tree planting has ramped up. I think Angie's here, but I believe that the estimate is that we'll be planting about 3,200 trees a year starting next year. And that is when you'll really start to see the balance of the fund going down. And honestly, at that rate, after 2 or 3 years of that, we're going to have to reassess if no other tree planting dollars come online and the balance is going down. That's not a sustainable path. So we are trying to front load as much as we can, because a tree planted now is better than a tree planted in 10 years. But at some point we are going to have to reassess how do we fund tree planting at this level.
Thank you, Brian. That's great news.
Yeah, Bruce and then Megan.
Yeah, I basically, Daniel said about everything I would say. I really think it's imperative that urban forestry speed it up, figure out how to speed it up. We don't have a whole lot of time, and dollars in the bank 2 years from now don't do a hell of a lot for us. So I know you're doing what you can. I want more. Thank you.
Great. You want to respond to that directly, Jen?
I do. We all agree with you, Bruce. And we are pursuing in every way and asking others to pursue additional funding. The need is far greater than that fund will ever have. And as Brian said, we're spending it down as quickly as we can responsibly. So yeah, if you get ideas, bring them on for new funds.
Okay, great. Megan.
Thanks for presenting these in tandem as well, because I feel like they're very much associated. And I think the thing that always concerns me, among other things that have already been shared, when this number goes up is I know it means that trees have been cut down. And so I can't help but think about, like, this is actually a fund because we're losing tree canopy. So that always sits uncomfortably with me, as I would rather there be less money in this and more trees. But it makes me think, just if we're having other conversations, almost like I don't think the money could be used this way. And maybe, I know Jenna said incentives don't work, but are there like potential financial incentives to, like, big financial incentives to encourage people to preserve trees during development? Like, I just keep being like, I'm watching all of the trees come down in my neighborhood, and that statistic that Rick gave, I'm just, I don't know. I don't want this number to go up. I want it to not be needed.
Yeah, that's a great, I completely agree with everything you said. We have seen some incentives built into the Title 33 land use code. I don't know if you recall a few years ago, the project Better Housing by Design, which is really focused on the kind of development happening in East Portland. There were some interesting, they call them amenity bonuses included, things like in exchange for tree preservation, you get added density of your development, which is intended to create a potential profit incentive to improve trees. I'm not sure if there's been much analysis by the Bureau of Development Services, who really administers that program, on if that's resulting in a lot of tree preservation. I don't think it has. So you're definitely articulating a challenge that I don't think has been fully solved yet.
And I wanted to thank you, Megan, for reminding all of us that the Tree Planting and Preservation Fund is literally because trees got cut down. Almost all of it is.
And I will just note that we did have a discussion some time ago, and then it was approved of originally having tree plantings occurring in the same places where trees were lost and in the same watershed kind of physical geography. And then we transitioned that to really kind of center an equity approach to that, where we really want to move trees, and the priority being low income, low canopy neighborhoods, and trying to think about what that might look like. And with at least what we're observing in terms of loss of canopy in much of East Portland in my kind of interpretation, alarmingly fast rates in those areas of town. What are the ways in which these funds can be then directed into some parts of town that are losing proportionally the largest amount of trees? And how do we then engage the communities in being able to support communities in maintaining the trees that are being put into the ground. Like that's an ongoing conversation. I just don't want to lose that thread that we're going to keep coming back to as a commission. And when we meet together, hopefully some point in June, we can really like think about what strategies we want to use as a commission. I want to put a seed. I want to put a seed down now. What strategies can we think about a commission to help support some of those further future long-term needs where trees go into the ground as well. Great, thanks. Thanks for that, Brian, and thanks, Jen and commissioners for your questions. Seeing no other comments and seeing our time, I'm thinking we want to really shift over to the urban forestry program overview conversation. So Brian, do you want to start us off and go for your three for now?
Yeah, gosh.
It's the Brian show.
You're hearing from me so much. Jeez. Yeah, I'm going to kick this off, and then Jen, Angie, and Rick are all going to be presenting a little bit. And I would just make a note to all of us. I think we are trying to end this by 11:25 so we can have our future agenda items discussion. So I think all of us will try to move through as quickly as we can on this one. But let me share my screen. All right. Yeah, this is intended to be, as Jen mentioned, a very brief overview of the urban forestry program, both for the new commissioners joining us, but we obviously Leah and Adrian joined us last year. I'm not sure they ever have seen this, and it's been quite a while for most commissioners actually. So, quick little overview. Just some brief notes on Portland's urban forest. We are currently, as of the most recent update to the canopy, about 29.8% canopy coverage. The city's goal is to have 1/3 of the city covered by tree canopy, and of course, in the last 5 years, we've experienced the first decline in tree coverage for about as long as we've been studying this. The city has 220,000 street trees, 1.2 million park trees, almost $3 million trees on private property, and we have a structural value estimate of $5 billion for the canopy. That is a 2007 estimate. There's probably an updated number out there, but obviously the value of the urban forest is extremely large. The urban forestry program is really guided by the Urban Forest Management Plan. You hear a lot about Title 11, the tree code, but actually Title 11 is one of the implementation measures of the Urban Forest Management Plan. This plan really guides everything that we do. We have the 3 goals listed there. This plan was created in 2004. And as many of you know, we are planning to begin the process of updating that plan this year. We are hiring a lead policy analyst for urban forestry right now, and updating this plan will be really the first project they work on. We expect that to be about a 2-year process. And now this is the organizational chart for urban forestry. Parks is the city's forest infrastructure manager. So as BES is to the wastewater system, stormwater, Water Bureau is to the water system, Peabody is the streets, Parks Urban Forestry is that to trees. The city forester is also the division manager, and so that city forester work group includes me. It includes Ashley, our new administrative specialist that we introduced earlier. And as I mentioned, we are hiring an urban forestry planning and policy analyst. And then we're going to have Rick. We're actually going to hear from Rick next to talk more about the permitting and regulation group.
Howdy, my name is Rick Faber. I'm the permitting and regulation coordinator. Our group consists primarily of the tree inspectors and the tree technicians. Our manager is Casey Jogerst. We are one of the front lines of the rules and regulations found within Title 11. We have the single point of contact, which is the 823 tree phone number, as well as trees@portlandoregon.gov. The tree technicians are the folks that manage those, along with reviewing lots of non-development and development permits over the counter. And then the tree inspectors are the folks that are actually getting out into the neighborhoods, looking at trees, making assessments based on species, health, condition, etc. We're looking at non-development scenarios. So when there is no development and permits are required for those trees that are on site greater than 12 inches or within environmental zones at varying thresholds, typically around 6 inches diameter. We also review the street trees for any kind of permitting needs, as well as any kind of work that's happening on city properties for regular non-development maintenance. We are reviewing, we've already spent a lot of time this meeting talking about development. So urban forestry does primarily review the street and city tree requirements for development, whereas the on-site tree requirements are reviewed by the Bureau of Development Services. But the tree inspectors do help out with that on-site review. We provide consultation services when necessary, and we also conduct tree preservation inspections when there are on-site trees being preserved. Those inspections are to make sure that fences are installed correctly, trees aren't being damaged, etc. In both development and non-development, the tree techs are taking in calls from the public if there's any concerns, any complaints, any potential violations, and assigning those to the tree inspectors to review those for code compliance, both, again, development and non-development. So we've got the same core group of people that are doing reviews of plans and permits, inspections based around those plans and permits, and any kind of code compliance around those plans and permits. Many other bureaus, those are all split up into different work groups, but we have the same people seeing a particular tree from the beginning to the end. And then, of course, we have a team that works on capital projects. So when the city is doing work that's triggering Title 11, the tree code, we have some inspectors that are plugged into that system, reviewing trees for any kind of preservation or planting or mitigation as needed. I think we've got a couple examples that are coming up. So this is just a couple quick pictures just to get in your head what we're doing out here. Non-development permits. We've got a street tree here in the city of Portland. The adjacent property owner is responsible for maintaining street trees, and permits are required to remove and replace them. In this particular case, the property owner put in an application to remove this European birch. It's a nuisance species. It's in the right of way. It's growing next to these guy wires. So the permit was approved. There may have been some other things going on at the particular time. These are just screenshots from Google Images. So maybe there was more going on with that tree at the moment. Either way, the tree inspector went out there, looked at it, approved it, and required a tree to be planted. The tree is required from the approved street tree planting lists. And so since we have a site with a large space, get it farther away from those guy wires, get a large form tree planted. Next one. So in development, we're focusing primarily on the city and street trees. We have been able to ramp up our preservation of these trees. So these pictures are focused on the trees themselves, getting up some protection around those. Of course, if we panned the camera a little bit to one side, which we can't do right now, we'd see some development happening on site. The idea is that as big material and construction vehicles are accessing this site, they're not going to cause any damage to the public infrastructure that are the city trees. Next one. And then this is just a nice example of a capital improvement project that was done through a limited improvement district, an LID. So it's a very unique method that the city gets to improve streets. This is what it looked like to begin with. We had a small street that was paved, no curb, no sidewalk. We had some trees that were smack dab in the middle of the public right of way. We had a property owner with a fence that was in the public right of way. The neighborhood wanted to make this better. So if you go to the next slide, we were able to bring in a tree inspector to help identify the needs of these particular trees, and working with the PBOT planners and engineers, we were able to determine how to both increase the ability for this right of way to function, both for people and for vehicles, without losing that canopy. We were able to make that little median in there, The one side is primarily bicycle access, freeing up the other side for cars to not have to worry about those bicycles coming at them. Sidewalks all around. There's a school on the right-hand side, so kids can get to school a little bit easier. So this was a great success. By bringing in urban forestry at the early stages of this city project, we were able to have some good tree outcomes. And I think that's permitting and regulation in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. My name is Angie DeSalvo. Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to meet the new commissioners. I am our Science Outreach and Planting Manager here for Urban Forestry. I've been here for about 12 years now and worked in a variety of roles in our team. And I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of some of the work that we do. So let's go to it. I guess broadly, we're split into three sort of mini groups: science and policy, outreach and stewardship, and planting. So I'll start with science and policy, and I like photos, so I chose to focus on pictures here. My team, we have a total of about 14 permanent positions in our SOP team. And in the science and policy group, our main goal is to be data-driven and to really center racial equity in all of the work that urban forestry does. And we provide a lot of the science and policy pieces to support those goals. So you may see our work in forest research and analyses, and a lot of reporting. Those are coming from my team. So one example would be our street and park tree inventory. This photo on the left, we took a community-centered approach to collecting our first street tree inventory data of over 200,000 trees a few years back. It's kind of hard to believe that we're now on our 10-year re-inventory coming up this year. As we always say, you have to know what you have in order to manage it well. So collecting that information is really key to the work that we do. We partner with a lot of other professional organizations, for example, the U.S. Forest Service, to be part of the Urban Forest Inventory and Analysis Program, which is essentially the nation's urban forest census. So we have permanent plots established throughout the city that we work with U.S. Forest Service to gather data on. We carefully track where we plant trees. The top right photo is a picture of our heat map from our recent planting, reflected in the trust fund report that you just heard about. We really are focused on planting in areas of highest need, so carefully tracking where canopy is lowest, where income is lowest, where our communities of color live, so that we can better serve our communities and get trees in the ground. We also want to make sure that those trees are surviving and thriving. So we have a very robust young tree monitoring and survival program that we manage. We track canopy, we do a lot of mapping, and we do a lot of GIS in this group. And then we also do policy. We say both policy with a capital P and policy with a small p. So everything from Title 11 amendments that you've recently heard about from us, as well as technical specifications like street tree planting standards, nursery acceptance standards, our approved street tree planting lists, etc. So those all fall in our science and policy group. Let's go to the next slide, please. We also on our team have 4 members who work on outreach, engagement, community stewardship, and partnerships. This is an actively growing part of our team. So we currently have 2 team members in place and 2 more to be hired soon for this work. One piece that we're very proud of is our youth conservation crew. You can see a photo of last year's crew on the left. We work with parks in a workforce development program to hire about 12 employees in the summer from very diverse groups of youth around town who we work with to do projects. And this summer, we're going to be doing street tree inventory and teaching young tree care skills like pruning, mulching, weeding, etc. And so this summer we'll be out and about. We also do a lot of planting with schools through our Learning Landscapes program on the bottom right, where we actively work with school staff and students to learn and teach about trees and then go out and get them in the ground. And we also have active volunteer programs where we teach tree care skills and do stewardship programs. Altogether, throughout urban forestry and the programs that we do, we log about 14,000 volunteer hours every year given back to the urban forest. And if you're interested in getting involved, this summer we're going to be having public tree inventory events. We offer a monthly workshop series where several times a month you can join us to do an active event or to learn. We also have a lot of public communication. We have a web newsletter that comes out twice a month, and lots more ways to get involved. And a lot of those are posted on our website and in our newsletter. All right, next slide, Brian. And then lastly, tree planting. Last in slides, but not in importance. We do a lot of tree planting, primarily funded through our Tree Planting and Preservation Fund, which was only established in 2015. And since that time, it's really been growing. For those of you who are newer, you heard me mention our citywide tree planting strategy, which was the first thing we did when the Tree Planting and Preservation Fund was established. Before we went out and started growing programs, we first took some time to work with Portland State University and our community engagement team to develop a really solid plan for how to best plant trees in an equitable manner. And we're now in the implementation stage for that. And by next year, we will have kind of hit what we estimate to be our sustainable capacity given the funding that we have. And we'll be planting around 3,500 trees annually. About 2,000 of those are through our yard tree giveaway program. And that is a program where any Portlander can receive up to 2 trees, primarily large evergreen and native trees to plant in their yard. And we offer those in the fall. And we also kind of as part of that package, so about 2,000 trees and yard trees, and we'll be planting about 1,200 street trees, again, focused in areas with highest need. And then we also plant trees at community spaces, schools, and of course in parks. And we primarily do that work with contractors, but we also use our internal urban forestry operations team, volunteers and others to do that work. So that is us in a snapshot, and I'll turn it back over to Jen.
Thanks, Angie. I will be presenting on our tree maintenance operations arm of urban forestry. The operations team functions as the city's arborists, so the tree workers, so to speak. They do tree pruning, tree maintenance, tree planting, removal. They also do forest pest and pathogen management for city-owned trees, so on those trees that are on city property. And that's across, their work is across Portland Parks properties as well as on other city-owned and managed properties. So properties that are managed by the Bureau of Transportation, for example, exception being for street trees, because that's the private property owner's responsibility, as I think you all have heard and know. Also working on BES managed properties and similar like that. Urban Forestry's arborists primarily plant trees in parks when they do planting. They also plant on other city-owned properties or in some streets on behalf of other city bureaus. Usually these are required plantings by code or part of capital improvement projects, and the other bureaus are fulfilling their tree planting requirements by having our teams do that work. This is around 250 trees a year, give or take, and we plan for this to increase thanks to the new parks levy funds. Operations also provides the city's 24/7 service for tree emergencies in public roads and city properties, which you've seen a lot of lately and heard about from me a little earlier, so I don't need to go into that in much detail, I think. I wanted to speak a little bit about a specific area of tree care and maintenance that you all have heard about in the past, and that is our Dutch elm disease management program that's run through our operations team and includes monitoring during the summer for the presence of infection in trees, and arranging with private property owners as well as city property owners for tree removal. We also treat city-owned elm trees in advance in the hopes that they will not come down with DED, which is fatal and spreads rapidly among trees. Another maintenance activity that the operations team performs, that's kind of one of their larger of all their maintenance tasks, is publicly owned heritage tree maintenance. So there are about 150 or so designated heritage trees that are located on city property. And the operations team is responsible for caring for those trees so that hopefully they will have long, robust lives and will enjoy them for many years to come. Most of the operations team members are in the arborist job title series. We have about 33 positions in operations currently. We also have recruitment open right now for several new arborist positions. So please get that word out to folks that you know. And also we have openings right now for tree inspectors, jumping back to Rick's part of the presentation. And these are all the result of the parks operations levy that Portlanders chose to pass in the past couple of years. The work that these folks do is highly skilled in all aspects of our arboriculture, and our arborists are required to have and maintain several certifications and licenses. It's also important to note that parks property tree maintenance is reactionary. And by that, I mean, when somebody sees an issue with a tree and calls, urban forestry responds and addresses that situation as best we can. It's not proactive. And that is something that we are working to change. And that thankfully is also directly funded by the Parks Operations Levy. And that will result in scheduled, systematic, strategic inspection and care for trees so they live their best, longest, and most productive lives. And we avoid having potential emergency situations, public safety hazards, and tree form and health conditions are addressed and identified and addressed early and often so that those trees will last longer. Next slide, please. This slide is just an example of some of our team's work. They use a lot of heavy equipment. The picture on the left you see is removing a tree which had fallen into Johnson Creek and was damaging a bridge abutment. And we work very closely in street trees, especially, or where streets are involved, of course, with the Bureau of Transportation. And in this situation, they called us in because of our expertise in equipment and had us help with that. And the photo on the right is one of our arborists providing maintenance in what appears to be an elm tree in Lonsdale Park. And this is their everyday activity, what they're out there doing. Before we move on to the commission, I just wanted to kind of wrap up the presentation you've had from our folks today by saying that our program right now is growing, it's changing, and we want it to be improving. And that's really thanks to the Parks Operations Levy. That is a critical step in the development of our program and our ability to serve trees and Portlanders. And it's also really critical in the future of our forest in the city. Next slide, please. So about the Urban Forestry Commission. The commission has specific duties in the city's tree code in Title 11. And that is, the commission is advisory to urban forestry, Portland Parks and Recreation, and also the city on primarily policies that relate to or affect or may affect trees and the urban forest. And the specifics in the tree code for areas where the commission's input is especially desirable is on the urban forest management plan, which you heard about earlier from Brian. Also on city plans, policies, and projects, reviewing those and providing input and advice on how those projects affect trees and how they should be done in terms of affecting trees. And examples of those that you've heard about today, the pedestrian design guideline is a good example. And also the Water Bureau's new proposed administrative rules, another example of how the commission would be advising in these sorts of things. Another specific area where the commission advises is on the budget, urban forestry's budget, and budgets affecting trees. And then also the commission makes recommendations to city council on certain specific things in particular, as per the tree code, those being amendments to Title 11, the tree code, heritage trees, listing, delisting of heritage trees, and other budget proposals that relate to trees. I'll mention also, you've heard about this earlier today, but the appeals board is also in the city's code for trees, the tree code, as kind of a subunit defined by code of the Forestry Commission. Its purpose is to hear applicant appeals on certain types of permits that urban forestry has not enacted in the way that the applicant wanted. It's most usually about a tree removal application that has been denied. And the appeals board has specialized training and protocols for how they do their work. Next slide. So some key challenges. There's one that's not on here because it's really recent, but I want to start with that one. And that is we are tracking decline in our canopy for the first time in many, many years. So that clearly is a key challenge. We want to be heading in the other direction, increasing. We also have a remarkable disparity in canopy distribution in the city of Portland, and that's been the case for some time. East of the Willamette River, where 80% of Portlanders live, our canopy cover is only 21%, which is on par with places like New York City and Los Angeles, which have more people and higher density of people. West of the Willamette, where only 20% or so of Portlanders live, that canopy cover is 56%, much higher. Another challenge is, of course, climate change. And this is in terms of trying to reduce or stop the effects of climate change, as well as being prepared to deal with the outcomes of it and be more resilient. And of course, climate change has huge impacts in terms of environmental justice. The climate crisis we're seeing exacerbates, in general, all of the environmental justice issues that already exist in the city. For example, the inequity in canopy distribution and tree services to all Portlanders. Street tree maintenance is also a key challenge, as you've heard a couple times, I think, today. Street tree maintenance, according to the city of Portland's policies, is the responsibility of the adjacent property owner, even though the tree is a city-owned tree. And a lot of our permitting work and the fees that we levy for that permitting work to fund it is a result of this policy. And we know the policy is a burden and a barrier to adjacent property owners, particularly folks of lower income, and we are seeking to see that policy changed. Right-of-way space for street trees is another significant challenge that you have also heard about today, and projects like the pedestrian design guide update affect that space allocation. And just to note that all of these disproportionately affect folks who are low income, Black folks, Indigenous folks, people of color, and communities that are in lower income and low canopy areas of the city. That concludes our presentation. If y'all have any questions, and if we have time, we'll be happy to talk about those.
Yes, we have a little bit of time. Looking at a few minutes here before we, I'd like to open up to future agenda items as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the chat here. I encourage you to take a look at that, commissioners. Would like to open it up for any responses, questions, especially if they're new commissioners here. If there's anything, this is kind of a broad overview of urban forestry and the activities that are happening. Any questions coming up for you all? Okay, great overview. Yeah, Leah?
This is just a quick comment. I think it's so helpful to see examples like Southeast Mill Street, where we were able to preserve trees and make the street safer, and it's next to a school, like all the benefits to the community. I feel like being able to share those examples more widely about like how those decisions were made and why and the benefits they bring, I think is super helpful. And I live, that's close to my neighborhood, so I also know how wonderful it is to actually like travel those streets on a bike or by foot. So yeah, just sharing those successes, I think, is really important.
Thanks, Leah. I'll echo that just by saying we hear a lot about heritage trees coming down, unfortunately, or not a lot, maybe some about that, and other kind of losses of canopy discussions going on. These are really important aspects, not just for keeping our kind of momentum going in in kind of urban tree conservation discussions, though also for the practical and I think very real reasons that Leah, you're mentioning in terms of how do we actually multi-solve with these particular challenges that we're facing in the region. So I'd love to take this and take it to neighborhoods all over the city and potentially all over the country. So yeah, Megan, and then Daniel.
My question was, I actually had this earlier, but Jen, your presentation brought it up. Have we ever considered doing a change to Title 11 where the commission would not be responsible for appeals and hearing appeals? When I was a contract with the Vancouver Urban Forestry, that was not a commission responsibility. So I was just curious if that had been considered.
Thanks for that question, Megan. And yes, we have thought about it, and we have that grand running list of potential future substantive tree amendments, and it is on there. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to talk about that more with you all.
And I'll add that one of our current code amendments is adding an administrative review step before things come to the appeals board. And our hope is that that will reduce the number of appeals coming to the appeals board.
Daniel.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jen, and Angie, Brian. That was a great presentation. Very helpful. So a question I have, I'm sure this has occurred to a lot of people relating to that issue of you're allowed to cut 2/3 of the trees in development situations, right? So what about the situation where, you know, somebody builds a deck and then they build a ADU, or they do small projects that are all development situations? They start off with 6 trees, they get to cut 4 trees, and then, or whatever. But anyway, the second development, do you get to cut 2/3 of the trees and then 2/3 of the trees, and all of a sudden you hardly have anything at all? Because if that's allowed, I think that would be a great opportunity for our Title 11 amendments project to have some kind of review, to be kind of more of a cumulative impacts type of thing. So maybe you look back 5 years to see if they've, on that same property, already applied to cut 2/3 of the trees. So I just wanted to throw that in as a potential amendment.
Thanks, Brian. Hope we're noting this. Roberta, and then Bruce, and then we gotta wrap it up. What, Roberta, muting? Unmuting, I guess.
Darn, thank you. A future agenda item. There was an item in the chat about residential development. Oh, is that my feedback?
You're good.
Sorry. Future presentation on the residential infill project 2. Unless the commission's already had that, I think that would be important for us to get a handle on. Somebody in the chat suggested that there's issue with space for trees on private property as well, and that's going to be one of the next big projects, and it reflects requirements of state law too. So I think the commission needs to be sort of fluent in those issues.
Great, thanks, Roberta. That's really helpful. Lot there, yeah. Anyway, keep going. Bruce.
I'd encourage any of the older UFC members to reach out to our new members and talk with them one-on-one. There's a bit of a learning curve here, and I think if you hear different perspectives, you know, you'll start to form your own ideas about how things work or don't work. And it really, I would just encourage everyone to do that. I've done that in the past, and I'll continue to do that.
Yeah. And you'll be inundated if you're meeting with all of us, but nevertheless, we're really here to, like, if you have questions, thanks, Bruce, just building on that, like, if you have questions, thoughts, just feel free also to reach out to us. That's how we build the community here and be able to provide the support. Jen.
Brian reminded us in the chat that there's a need for a vote authorizing a commission member to provide a comment at the Water Bureau public hearing on the 18th, which is before the next commission meeting.
Oh, right.
And I think it'd be fine to authorize the policy committee to make that choice and handle it in their meeting next week.
Yeah, policy committee has been on that and has provided response to that in the past. So Daniel, does that sound like something we could move the policy committee to consider?
Yeah, I'm sure we can do that, seeing
Okay.
as how we now have at least 4 commission members on the policy committee, and maybe more. That would be great. So just wanted to let the new members know, if you go to the UFC website under the meetings section, you'll see policy committee and there's a Zoom link there. And it's the same Zoom link every month. But we would love to have some of the newer folks come, and it would be an opportunity where we have some more time where you could ask questions and love to have you.
I move that the policy committee be given the authority to testify at the Portland Water Bureau hearing regarding the large diameter pipes and trees in their May hearing.
Thanks.
I second.
Thanks, Adrian. Second. All in favor, policy committee, testify? Hands up. Okay. Looks unanimous. So I don't need to call any others. Did I miss anybody? Any no's on that? Okay, any abstentions? All right. Jen, real quick.
Anjanette had something in the chat. She's attending the Parks Action Meeting. This is about Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, the whole vision and mission project Parks is looking on. And she asked if there's anything we would like to bring to that space, the commission would like to bring to that space. So maybe in the chat or say it.
Great, thank you. And I will note, was able to meet with some of the Healthy Portland, Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland group. And the idea is to have them flesh out a bit more of what's going on with that. Anjanette, thanks for supporting that work as well. And part of it is like for us to be able to check in as commission on that conversation. And then in May or most likely June, we're going to have an update on that process with a lot of the outreach that they've done. They're going to be coming back to us to talk about that much bigger conversation, which as some commissioners who were here at that meeting remember, there was kind of a little bit of challenge in the framing that we had at least offered to them in terms of how they can position trees and green spaces, especially urban forests, within that larger conversation about Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland. So that was one piece. So I want to be conscious of time here. We're coming on a minute over, and any future meeting items, I think we identified a few of those already, but I do want to create a little bit of space. If there's anything coming up, you put it in the chat. Conversations. This is something we want to keep doing at each meeting, is to have a kind of a corral where we can hold all the different future meeting options that when we chat, at least Jen, Brian and I chat, we can have bring those up for commission meetings in the future. And we already have a running list, I think, Brian, right? We can circulate that.
Yeah, good idea.
Is it possible? I don't know if it's possible, like for this kind of a thing, can we create, is it legal? We'd have to maybe ask, can we create a Google Doc for us to kind of add to? And that's just how I work in so many other realms. And it just feels so much more efficient for just getting brainstorming ideas down.
Yeah, I think that's great. It would just have to be a public document. So I can create it and post a link on the UFC page just so that the public has access to it. But I think that'd be perfectly fine. That's great.
Okay. Great. And we can sort through that. That'd be really helpful. Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
Well, here we are at the end of another epic Urban Forestry Commission meeting. April, we're on Zoom still. We're kind of made a lot of progress today. Really want to again echo welcome Roberta, Melinda, Ivory. Really lovely to have you here. Looking forward to working with you closely and kind of getting into some of these issues a little more deeply as you get steeped into some of these questions and topics that we confront here. So any questions, please reach out to any of us, and commissioners, please reach out to new members to see if we can engage in a conversation and keep the support going. So want to just officially close the meeting today, and look forward to seeing you all next month, if not sooner. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to all the presenters.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care all. Bye-bye.